Carlos, thank you so much for your time today. What a wonderful opportunity to talk to you. My goodness, this movie really was fantastic. I didn't know what to expect, and I loved how it all just wove together. Tell me a little bit about, finding these 27 such talented people and how it all evolved.
No, thank you so much. I mean, the way that the movie, the story, and the poets came into my life is similar. I was not expecting to be so moved by meeting them, and it all happened during a spoken word showcase that I got invited to. A friend of mine knows the woman who runs the organization, and they were practicing for this show that they do in different high schools around LA, and they just wanted some thoughts and notes and creative sort of like feedback. So I sat there and I heard all 27 of them, one after another, just give you a little bit of context about who they are and why they wrote the poem that they were going to read, and then they would perform the poem. And I was just so inspired by seeing this group of young artists like so beautifully talk about their communities, their city, their place in it, that I just couldn't stop thinking about it. And I came back a few days later and I proposed to Diane Luby Lane, who runs the organization. I proposed this idea of exploring what it would be like to adapt this into a movie, and that's all we had. We didn't really know how it was going to come together, what it was going to look like, but it was just this seed of an idea that started it all.
And then, you had a very short time to get this together. I mean, conceive it, write it, get everybody's ideas, and then get it shot and get it out there. Like, what was the jumping off point? Like, what did you say to them and say, okay, this is what I want you to do? Because obviously you have to weave a narrative that flows, right? So what did you say to them to get them started?
Well, essentially the jumping off point was, what I pitched to them was this idea of working on a movie where they would be the stars and the authors. So it would be like each of you would get to write and perform your individual scenes. This is going to be sort of like a collection of vignettes. And then together, all of us are going to try to figure out a way to weave them all in and to interconnect the narratives. Because a lot of them were either graduating school or on their summer break, we only had the summer to work on the movie. So the pitch was like, we'll work on it and shoot it over the summer, and it'll be an experiment, and we'll see what kind of magic or what kind of madness we can concoct. So that was really sort of like the brief, and then they each went off and came back with poetry that they were particularly connected to, and from there we sort of like started putting this big puzzle together.
Yeah. And what was the editing process like? It had to have been extremely hard, just going through all of this material and making it, you probably could have had a 24-hour film, I would think.
It was all of it. I mean, it was the editing, like developing the script and the story, shooting it, and then into editing. It was just a constant exercise in sort of like staying malleable and seeing the certain things that were working, certain things that were not working, hearing feedback from people, screening the movie for a lot of people, and trying to get sort of like their reactions, because it was such a workshop mentality. It's not like we never had a finished script and we're like, hey, we're editing to this. Like, we were still writing and rewriting, we were still reshooting little bits once we went into the editing. So the movie was really alive until the moment that we had to stop working on it.
Yeah, I can just imagine. You, of course, gave us Blind Spotting, which I loved. Wow. And working with those guys who are masters at what they do, David and Raphael. Yeah. How did working on that, that experience kind of influence what you did for this?
I mean, it was on the surface, it seems like potentially two really similar projects, but they cannot be more different. I mean, Blind Spotting was a script that David and Rafa had worked on for 7 years, and we went through like the very standard sort of like indie filmmaking process. of having a locked script, and then it still changed, but having a mostly locked script, and then casting the part, and then rehearsing and then shooting. And this was really so compressed, and it was so it was all happening at once, and it was very much sort of like intuition based filmmaking, where you just sort of like had to trust that the
Right.
pieces were going to come together, even though at the moment of shooting, like, it didn't fully make sense sometimes. um and I think it was, I mean, working with poets, working with spoken word as a storytelling tool, I think that was very important for me. I come from music videos, so I
Right.
think
Yeah.
that I already sort of like had this history in trying to sort of like capture performances and making them look effortless and making them look natural and exciting.
Hmm.
And I think that translated into blind spotting, and really just into summertime as well. Like, I think the biggest challenge was just to, of course, you're aware that this is a poem and you're aware that someone is performing it, but to hopefully eventually get to a place where this is just the world of the movie, and you accept it, and
Yeah.
you don't, it doesn't take you out. And maybe some people would say that we accomplished that, some people would say that we didn't, but at least in terms of how I imagined it should feel and sound, I think we very much did that, and I'm happy with how it came together.
Oh, 100%. It's funny because these poets are at the core, they are performers, but they're not actors. So did that influence anything, or were they comfortable?
I mean, it did influence it, and even though they had never acted in front of a professional film camera, they had performed so much in front of audiences,
Right.
schools, auditoriums. Some of them had done a lot of events for big organizations and companies. So they're very aware of themselves. They're very aware of their voice, their body language. I think that some concepts of sort of like acting, or like putting a performance together, they were so familiar with. So I think more than anything, it was just going through the technicalities of like how a film set runs, and you do a certain thing multiple times, different angles, like just some of the basics that I think they quickly got. But the real sort of like foundation of what it takes to connect with someone and what it takes to tell a story, I feel like they were so good at it already.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I have a few minutes, but I want to tell you, like, what I love about you, Carlos, is that you are not scared to mix it up with your career. I love that. You go from blind spotting to this, well, you go from music video, you're going to blind spotting, and then you do this big Disney animated film, which was fantastic, by the way.
Thank you.
And then this, but how nerve-wracking was it for you to go into Disney, and like, I can't even imagine what your first day of work was like on that.
It was incredible, and also just terrifying, because I grew up watching animated movies, and to all of a sudden be at the helm of one is like
Yes.
dream come true on so many levels. But it's unlike anything I've ever done. The size of the crew, the scope of the production, it was just impossibly big. So there was a learning curve, and there was lots of firsts, and I it took a minute for me to feel like I had a hang of it, and I could understand how sort of like the whole machine works. But
Right.
once I did, it's an incredible place. There's so many good artists, there's so many talented storytellers, so it's I've been learning a lot from being there.
Oh, I can't even imagine. Oh, well, we'll see you back at Disney. They'd be nuts not to hire you back for another one. So what are we going to get from you next after summertime? Are you working on anything now?
I am still at Disney Animation, working on one more movie that comes out in 2 years, and I'm also simultaneously trying to sort of like think about my indie side of things and what
Good.
I can do simultaneously. So hopefully, in the next few years, there will be another of these like big, incredible animated features, and then something more along the lines of summertime, which is just like cozy and
Yeah.
intimate, and just beautiful in a different way.
Well, keep up the great work. You're really giving us some good stuff. I'm a huge fan. So thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And best of luck with summertime and everything else. I can't wait to find out what Disney project you're working on. Very exciting.
Thank you so much. Soon. It'll
Okay.
be soon.
Thanks, Carlos. Okay, take care. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.
Of
Bye.
course.